I'm Jeff Smith, and I want to talk with you today about my favorite subject, kitchens and food. But first, the usual bit of history. That's what we always do. This is the oldest piece of cooking equipment that I have in my kitchen. This goes back 250,000 years to, this is really the stick, to Peking man. He roasted meat over a fire. He was the first one to begin using cooking equipment. Since that time, we've become a little more sophisticated, though we've passed through strange periods. This is an original food processor. It comes from Italy. You can still buy these, and you just pound everything to death. The best place, I think, to see the history of the American kitchen is indeed colonial Williamsburg, where they have wonderful equipment, and it's all legit. These women are cooking over primitive stuff since colonial time. That's a frying pan with feet on it. It's called a spider. She cooks right in the middle of the fireplace over a trivet. You put a kettle of water on top of a trivet, you see, and the coals are underneath. We have no stove elements here, and she has to lean over all the time. Oh, it was tiring. And this is a Dutch oven. This one, I think, is really clever. I didn't understand that this would actually work. She has a fire underneath it. You see, it has feet on it. And then she puts coals on top so that it's heated from both the top and the bottom. And she controls the temperature. That's the thermostat right there. There it is. She controls the temperature by adding coals or taking them off. And they actually bake in this. Now, this is Mount Vernon. I had a good time with General George and Martha Washington. This is her food processor. She actually used this marble one from Italy. And the fireplace was filled with several different fires. This is really the Washington's fireplace. Wonderful place at Mount Vernon. And you had several different fires going in the fireplace so you could control temperatures by moving things about. This was Martha's brick oven. She was evidently quite a baker. She had wonderful bread, and everyone was terribly fond of her sense of hospitality and her good food. This is my favorite. Look at this. George loved toast. I shouldn't call him George. This is a toaster. Put the bread in, you could turn it around, you see. Set it in front of the fireplace. I think that's fascinating. Now, Tom Jefferson's kitchen, you know, this great eater, is filled with fascinating early American cooking pieces. This, of course, is a cabbage slicer. Mr. Jefferson was very, very fond of vegetables. That is actually his scale. He really used that. Though I understand he didn't hang around the kitchen much, but nevertheless, he had several people who would work there using equipment like this. Enormous mortar and pestle, my Lord, it must have been hard to operate. And this is an original apple peeler. The apple would go on one end and you peeled it with a paring knife while you spun it along. This one I bet you cannot guess. Let me see. Can you guess? Can you guess what this is? It's for making 36 candles at once by the old dip method. Isn't that fun? Beautiful fireplace. Monticello is just lovely. An old sausage stuffer. We're talking work here, gang. We're talking serious work. And one of the things that Mr. Jefferson brought to the New World was a waffle iron that he picked up in Belgium, I think. This is not exactly the same one, but it's certainly to be attributed to the good Mr. Jefferson, the gentleman from Monticello who so loved food. Here's an old sieve that was in his kitchen. Can you imagine using something like this? It was a very interesting kind of automatic device, but you needed a different gadget for every single job in the kitchen. And finally, I found an old lemon squeezer. You remember, I've talked about lemon juicers for you all the time, but this one, of course, works by the old squeeze method. The history of the kitchen for us is most interesting, but a great change came about during the Second World War. You know why? Well, we had built kitchens for one person. She was called Mama, and we were expected to stay out of the kitchen. She was all by herself, and she had to do everything. During the Second World War, she moved off to a job at the Boeing Airplane Company making planes for the war effort, you see. And thus, we all had to begin investigating that kitchen. And you know what we decided? You can't put 3 people in that kitchen. We'll trip and kill each other. Look at the plan we were using. You see, this was called the old triangular pattern. I'm afraid that this is probably typical of your kitchen. You see, the refrigerator was in one corner, then you had the stove and the sink, and you ran between the 3 of them. I'm convinced that that triangle of pathway in the middle that you see there is as dangerous as the Bermuda Triangle. We'd lose whole people in the place, running back and forth. It wouldn't work. The second major change that came about in our kitchen to bring us together was the invention of the TV tray. We began eating privately, and we decided that loneliness really is not a good thing. So in our time, we're back to cooking, and I'm very, very glad. That's what I do, because I love food, I love the family, I love everyone together. Now, problems. How are you going to get your kitchen to work efficiently for you? One, Set up your kitchen in terms of stations rather than a place for one person. For instance, in this kitchen, here in Chicago, we have a stove station. I have ovens in the walls. I have sinks over here. I have a sink at this end. I have cutting boards all over the place. And this is a galley kitchen, you see, so that several of us can work here together and not get in each other's way. I want you to do that for your family. You really can do it with your kitchen. This is my kitchen in Seattle. It's my test kitchen. All right, so it looks a little flamboyant, but Lord, there are 4 or 5 of us at a time working there. And we have a grand time, you see. There are lots of stations. That's the only safe way that you can cook together. The second thing I want you to be mindful of is buying good equipment. Please don't think that if you're buying inexpensive kitchen equipment that you're going to get good food out of it. That's just not going to happen. It may be a little expensive in your own mind to start with, but in the long run, it's going to be the most frugal way to shop, because eventually, you see, you'll realize that you were very wise years ago to buy good things. They'll last. Here's a piece of history. I suppose you don't think about a refrigerator as being history, but indeed it is. The refrigerator changed the life of the American cook. We're the only people in the world who have refrigerators all over the place. Look at this one. KitchenAid's even put ice and water in it. You know, when Channing and Jason first began playing with ours, they were flabbergasted over the fact that ice water is really a fun thing to have. And they've stopped drinking so much soda pop. Now, I consider that a very wise investment. A very wise investment indeed. I have an oven built into the wall. This happens to be a convection. I'll show it to you in a minute. I have a range. This one's gas. I love it. It's great fun. And it helps me relax when I'm in the kitchen, and it helps me have a good time. The other thing I want you to note is that I don't put my appliances in a garage. If you have an appliance garage, I'm sorry. I don't want things hidden away. I want to walk into the kitchen and see things and have all of my equipment say, use me, enjoy. I'm concerned about that, and I'm convinced that good design is always attractive. So, let's reorganize the kitchen. Let's reorganize our time. And for heaven's sakes, think about cooking seriously at least one day a week. We can do it with just a little planning. Now, let me show you what I mean by cooking properly one day a week. That is to say, all at once. First of all, get out a good food processor, and I want to make an herb blend. This one is interesting because it will grind herbs for me as well as just about everything else you can imagine, and it's because it isn't too big. You remember the story of Mama Bear and Daddy Bear and Baby Bear? Baby Bear's machine was too little, you know, his little bowl, and Daddy's was too big. This is Mama size, and it's just perfect for the kind of preparation I want you to do one day a week. Now, here's an herb blend that's so easy to do, and it'll help you replace your desperate need for salt. I want to throw in a couple of teaspoons of pepper, cracked pepper. Now, I've already ground mine, you see. You can't put peppercorns in a food processor, for heaven's sakes. Now, to that, I want to add about 6 bay leaves. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sort of, you see. Let's get some bay leaves in there. There we go. That'll do us. And then we're going to add some oregano. I want about a teaspoon of oregano. There we go. And this is whole. These are all whole herbs, you see. Now, a 4th teaspoon of everything else. I need some marjoram. This will really help you a lot in your kitchen. A half teaspoon of all the rest of these. Marjoram. I said the 4th, but I was lying to you. Thyme. There it is. We need some basil. There we go. And we need some savory. And if you'd like some rosemary, you can throw that in too. Look at that. The savory is not whole at all. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is simply grind this up. So we're going to have a fresh herb blend. And while that's working, I want to tell you that this machine is not going to march around on the counter for you. I had one at home that it walked away when it was supposed to be working. I don't want that. Buy good quality. I've told you that before. Okay, that's enough. We've ground up the herbs and spices. I'm going to put them in a small. Well, actually, this is a French jelly jar. Now save this for your cooking during the week. And whenever you have a gravy or something that, well, you know what I'm talking about. It just doesn't come across. It's kind of pooped out. Can I use the word? Of course I can. Well, this is what I want you to use. keep this aside, and you can put in a nice blend. There, cap it up, and I'm going to stick it off the counter. It doesn't have to stay in the refrigerator. Don't worry about that. Not at all. And I can put that in a soup that's flat easily. Now, secondly, I suppose I should dust this out, shouldn't I? I don't want to get my herbs all over it. Second thing you want to do is grate some fresh cheese each week. I don't want you using the stuff that comes in a box, you know, that, well, it tastes like the box. You don't need that. So I'm using a blade that grates cheese. And this is a jewel, because I can, the flavor of fresh cheese is so very different than that old stuff from the market. It's just been around for generations. Who wants war surplus cheese? This is a Pecorino Romano. It's my favorite. There. Into the machine we go. I better cut off a bigger chunk here. Won't quite fit down the tube. There we are. Now, when you do this, this is a great thing to do with your kids, but you've got to help them understand. There we are. You've got to help them understand that they must be careful with machinery. But when you consider what this machine will do for you to help your week, why, it's incredible. Look at this. It's just like snow. Whiter than snow it is indeed. And I'll put this aside, and this will be ready. This should last me for several days of my cooking, right? Now, I haven't done the sacred thing for you yet, and that, of course, is garlic. I don't want you to stand around and peel garlic every day. I know that that's a pain, but please understand that if you buy that pre-chopped garlic from the market, it's full of chemicals. You don't want that. We want you to eat well. So, to refresh your memory, this is how you clean garlic. Put the head, come here, you. This is fresh garlic. Put the head on the counter and lean on it, you see? So lean on the whole thing, and it'll all fall apart. Then pick out a couple of, many nice cloves, and what you're going to do is hit them with a glass or the bottom of a knife. Just crack it, and the kernel will come right out of the casing. You see, it's very easy to do this. So I don't want you to stand around and say, "Well, I don't want to bother cleaning garlic because it's too painful." Don't give me that. It's not painful. It's very easy to do. Now, what's the advantage of our one-day-a-week cooking? I have cleaned. I find my blade here. I have cleaned 40 cloves of garlic all at once for you. Can you believe it? Boy, now you know you're with the Frugal Gourmet, don't you? Huh? There we are, 40 cloves of garlic, and I'm going to grind that up with my regular all-purpose blade, just pulsing it a bit, you see? I don't want mush. Okay, one more, there. It is absolutely even. It is absolutely ready for every single meal that I want to use in my home with garlic, and I can put this in the refrigerator. Be careful now with this knife. This is a Sabatier blade. Please handle it like you would any good knife. That is to say, don't just throw it in a drawer and mistreat it like you do your other knives. Please, be careful with your knives. They're your closest friend. That's all a food processor is, you know, is an electric knife that's been very well educated. All right, so now I have all my garlic packed into a container here, and I'm going to put a bit of olive oil on the top of that to seal it. Here's my olive oil. And this will keep in the refrigerator for a good week, but there's no chemical in this. You see? Just seal it with a bit of olive oil. And you see, I now have about a cup of garlic. You realize this will last me for hours. It's perfect. And it's fresh. And it has no chemicals in it. All right, now, what are we going to do with some of these things? The third thing I want you to do is to prepare a mirepoix of vegetables. Very, very simple. Into your food processor, throw an onion. We want to cut the bottom off first, remember? Cut the bottom off first, and then the top. And a machine will cut onions up for you so rapidly, I just don't want to hear anything about wailing and crying. Please, I just don't have time for that anymore. I want to come home from work each night and be ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to whack up an onion and put that in our machine. That's plenty. And I also want to add, 2 or 3 stalks of celery. You don't have to do any work, just chop them up. In they go. And a couple of carrots chopped up too. There. All right. Now those are the basic 3 vegetables that we're using for a mirepoix, or literally, it means chopped up. I've got to turn my stove on. Here we go. It means chopped up vegetables. That's all there is to it. So we'll chop them up in a hurry. The French chef who uses this all the time, you see, he